Hello, everyone. Welcome to a little bit of woo woo, a continued series of videos that other people are doing that we're going to do too. I'm so excited. I have Miss Michele, my friend Michele, Soul Coach Michele, your co-creative life coach and friendly neighborhood woo woo. And we are going to talk today about the eclipse yesterday. We're recording this on 4/9. I'm going to try and get it up today, do my best. And we're going to talk a little bit about what to expect and what's going on. And Michele, tell us what we need to know about what happened yesterday.
Okay, so first of all, I know you're like, I want to get it up today. Just remember, even though, yes, the moon shifted into Taurus sometime early in the morning, and like on the science side, yes, we are closed. But and we're now in this kind of really interesting grounded energy that feels a little bit better. But the energy of the reverberation of the eclipse, I personally, what Spirit has told me, will last till like mid-May, like as we're processing the information. Okay. So if you don't get it up today, and you don't stress, because it'll be valid for probably till like mid-May, and then even so after that, because it is life changing. And I think when we were before we hit the record button for the podcast, we were saying that this, people always say like eclipses are like, oh, they welcome, like close one chapter and welcome in another. And I'll be honest with you, what Spirit has channeled to me, and I'll read it here in a minute, is more, with the confluence of like new moon in Aries, solar eclipse in Aries, Chiron in Aries. And by the way, Generation X has the common wound of Chiron and Aries. So if you're a Gen Xer, you may have felt this in some really strong spaces in your life. I've witnessed it in at least two people, if you want to include me, three people, and that I've known, and like some other folks. And I have, I'm sure tonight when I host my Celestial Soul Circle group, all of them will have like life-changing stories, because they're all like either the older Xennials or Gen Xers. So if that's you and you had some big stuff happen, that there's a reason for that, because we're not closing a chapter, we're literally closing a book. Like that old version of you is no more. So if you have not reconciled that, that's okay. Those are choices, but I'm going to encourage everybody. I always say, yeah, challenges are hard and these kinds of changes might be hard, but if you lean into the lesson, it's a lot easier than trying to resist things. So, and then, we're opening today is like the new book, chapter 1, preface, what have you. But do you want me to share the channel message that I shared on social yesterday, that just kind of everybody?
Absolutely. If you think people would be interested in that, let's talk about that. So you do, she just tell everyone know she does channeling. We're gonna do a thing where we'll talk at some point about how to channel, because a lot of people are waking up to it spontaneously, unfortunately, and kind of going kind of like kind of like in Twilight, where he figures out that he's a wolf and they're like, oh geez, what do I do with this? That's what's happening to a lot of people with channeling. We're gonna have to do a show on that. I'll probably do a series. If
There's
Michele
a
wants to play,
great
she can.
movie. There's this really great funny movie with Ricky Gervais in it, and he becomes like an unwitting medium called Ghost Town.
Huh.
And it is so cute and so funny. And like his character from the original Office, the UK Office, is like this cranky guy, and he plays a cranky dentist who accidentally, like, something happens to him, and I forget what it is, and he ends up in the hospital, and he almost dies because the hospital almost kills him, and then he wakes up with mediumship skills.
Okay, well, I hope it's not that way for everyone. Of course, you had me at
No, I
Ricky
hope not
Gervais.
either, because
You had me at Ricky Gervais,
cute,
so
it's
I'm
a
gonna.
cute movie. Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, okay.
but for those of us who are already on the other side, but yes, I agree. Okay, so I do conscious channeling. I do mostly written channeled writing. So this is what was shared with me yesterday, and I call it source energy channeling just because that's where it comes from to me. And I'm just going to read it, which is why I'm looking off the screen. And what was channeled was, hello, beloveds. Although source is speaking to your heart in this message, the celestial energy is incredibly supportive of your ascensions should you choose them. Today is a day of crossing the threshold. The last few weeks have brought forward wounds, shadows, things we'd rather not mention, for it might upset the ship. Wounds. All the things you have chosen to eclipse in your life, and all of the foul medicines of blame, shame, and guilt that you have chosen to try to heal them with. No healing had occurred, just more wounding brought on by the blame, shame, and guilt. Do not blame yourself even more here. These were inherited teachings to you, and not now is the time to let those teachings go. These past few weeks, all of this has been brought front and centered for your viewing, not to open up a door of shame, blame, and guilt, but rather a journey to knowing that accountability, responsibility, and love to yourself is not accompanied ever by punishment, as you have been trained. In fact, when you are accountable and responsible to and in love with your highest selves, we are in a vibration that is matched only by love. This day is the culmination of this journey. It may have been physically and emotionally bumpy versions of ripping off a Band-Aid, but now you can see all of the wound that needs healing and choose the medicine that closes the door, the book, not just the chapter, on that with love, and release it with love so you can open the door, write a new book from today forward. It is also a time not just to start from the beginning, but from experience. You are not a newbie, my dear, and no, you shouldn't know better. In fact, you are starting from a place of wisdom, a place of honor, a higher vibrational place, because again, if you allow it, this energy has allowed you to shed the skin of the old that you tolerated a lot of unsupportive people, behaviors, thoughts, beliefs, and structures that created bigger and bolder blocks of fear to your ascension for your destiny and for your calling. Today you emerge washed clean, if that is your choice, baptized into the new version of you, a more aligned trinity of self. You will witness those who choose otherwise, and that is their choice and not yours to convince or fix. It is time, if you are embracing this, for you to rise, to emerge, shine your light, and walk toward your calling and destiny in the energy of love, whatever that looks like for you. In gratitude to the eclipse energy, blessed new moon, honored Chiron and Aries, wounded healer of self. That's what
Love
was
it.
shown.
Great message. That's beautiful. I love your cup, by the way.
Sorry, slurping.
I don't know who's like, what do you find?
Dual
Like a
purpose cup.
Ouija board cup. And in case you forget the alphabet, there you go. It's
Right.
right there.
I can you do my little, yeah.
I know everybody's all weird about Ouija boards, but I only had one experience and it was really positive. But I wouldn't recommend it as like a daily practice. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's
another conversation.
That's another conversation. But yeah, when we were doing it, we were trying to get the name of I took a channeling class, and we figured out the best way to get our guides to actually spell out their names for us, because it's easier, because sometimes you can't pronounce. You guys know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you can't pronounce the names. They actually made them spell it on the Ouija board, and it was really kind of cool.
Oh, that is
kind of
cool.
I thought it was a fun way of doing it, but
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't weird. I wouldn't recommend doing them on a daily basis, though, because I think it might be a little weird for some people.
Yeah.
So way off topic. Sorry, guys. Squirrel, right?
This is kind of what happens when Jill and I chat.
When you get people that you really like, and then you're like, you forget that you're recording, and it's just a conversation. And I hope you guys find it interesting, because we were talking about Alcatraz earlier. So we may talk a little bit about ghosts a little bit later if we have a sec. People I love that it comes in the heels of a retrograde, or in the middle of a retrograde. Yeah. And depending on which annoying friend you're talking to, retrograde is either the harbinger of doom, you can't work on your cars, or it's kind of a nothing burger. What is your take on how the eclipse is going to be affected by the Mercury in retrograde?
I think honestly, if we and I agree with you, there are, and it drives me up a wall. Well, I choose to allow it to drive me up a wall, and I'm
there you go. Take responsibility, Michelle.
Right. So I'm trying not to allow that, but it let's say it hurts my heart when I see fellow woo-woos choose to participate in clickbait where Mercury retrograde and say eclipses and all this are these harbingers of doom that you have to go hide under a tree. Like I saw someone, I was actually talking to a friend of mine yesterday at one of the eclipse events I was at, and he was like, it's crazy when you hear people say stuff like, you shouldn't be practicing, you shouldn't be doing readings during eclipse season, blah 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 blah, or Mercury retrograde, or any of this crap. He's like, no, like you do you, boo. If you're in the midst of, because these are really callings to lessons, and Mercury retrograde is kind of like, we get 3 or 4 a year, and they're really callings and invitations for you to close down other stuff. That's why you have, you kind of feel like you're pushing uphill with like contracts, and contracts are really just agreements, and and I'll talk about that in a minute. But Like when you feel like you're pushing stuff up the hill and can't get things done, it's because that's not where your focus is supposed to be. It's not because like the universe is challenging you or testing you, or the universe never challenges or tests you. If you are the universe and you're willy-nilly about something, you're testing yourself. I mean, that's really the bottom line, in my opinion. And for people to put fear out there and scare the hell out of baby boos and other people like that, it breaks my heart, because that's not what this is all about. What this is really all about is creating a space for us to engage with the lessons that have been brought forward in our soul contracts. So, like, I think I was saying, I can't remember if we were recording that, but like all Gen Xers are Chiron and Aries. I mean, that's pretty much how we are, because it's a, every generation has their Chiron in a certain area, and other ones might have, and I'm sorry, I hit the mic. Other ones might have similar to us, but I just know from my own personal experience. And the Chiron and Aries wound is all about, and it's so funny because whenever you talk to a Gen Xer, it's like we're the Jan Brady generation of generations. Like there was even that CBS News graphic that left us totally off, and nobody noticed there was like 10 years missing off of the graphic. And it's like we are the generation that, even though we claim an identity, it's like nobody sees us. And that's like totally the Chiron and Aries wound. It's knowing who you are and putting yourself out there. Now, when you have that with new moon in Aries, which is, Aries is fire and new starts, it's like the best time when the moon is Aries. Launch your program, launch your business stuff, like do that kind of thing. Start new stuff. And it's because you're tuned into yourself, because Aries is the is like the first baby of the zodiac. It's all about you. It's all about, and not in a selfish way, that's kind of low vibrational Aries, but high vibrational Aries is about knowing who you are, being in touch with your inner being, and shining it out without fear into the world, shining it out with love. Okay. And that's what new moon brings, which is why everybody gets so charged up. And then the eclipse yesterday, and eclipse season in general, I like to refer to it as a commencement, which commencement people think of graduation. And it really is, I'm closing the door on one thing and I'm starting something new all in the same moment. That's what that is, in my opinion. And when we do that, and the cool thing is, when you have eclipse season, it's not, 2 weeks is kind of short, but it's not that short to really wrap up your old business, finish that last bit of chapter. I know, like I'm reading the last book of Outlander and I really don't want it to end. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Outlander. That's why I went to Scotland, because, I had my Outlander tour and everything.
If you guys haven't read it, I'm so sorry. You have to.
Yeah, you need to read the books. Like you can watch the shows.
The show was actually pretty good. I think
good.
think they really did a good job on the shows. Anyway, sorry, Outlander,
right.
squirrel, another squirrel.
We could totally
my God.
like, and we could talk about all kinds of like woo-woo shit that happens in that show. But the books are great. So but kind of like I'm in my last, I think, 6 hours of the last book of the Outlander series, and I don't want it to end. And I'm already kind of looking for other books to look. But that's kind of what that 2 weeks is. Wrap up your chapters. I know you don't wanna, because starting stuff that's new is scary, but it's also exciting. And that was in Aries too, which is also about getting rid of all of the programming and all the crap, so that you can start and really tap into your inner being. And then the Mercury retrograde, which started, I want to say on the 1st, which I know that's like ironic, right? We had
I know
April Fool's Day was when Mercury retrograde started. It's like, no, they ain't playing. But the reason I like to think about this, when you look at the flow, and I did a video on this on my channel where I did a whole flow of this that goes all the way into mid-May, because that's when the post shadow of this Mercury retrograde ends. But right now, Mercury retrograde, your technology gets wonky. My phone and everything has been just a cluster, and I'm just, just be prepared for that kind of crap. And I always tell people, like, I love that I used to loathe being like the paralegal, but the legal background that I have really, I think, is a nice foundation to understand Mercury retrograde, because all I did was contracts, and you're not supposed to sign contracts, and nobody ever tells you why. And the reason why is, when you make an agreement, whether that agreement is about your programming, like you agreed with your parents to believe something that they told you as a kid, that's an agreement or a nonverbal contract. If you're getting engaged or divorced, if you're buying a vehicle and you're signing loan documents, like any transactional thing, those are agreements, okay? What that is Mercury is over communication. Agreements, contracts, whatever, those are interchangeable, whether they're verbal, written, what have you, they are communicating how the relationship between this party and that party will behave. And when you do that during Mercury retrograde, that's why contracts can either be really strong or unravel, or you have to dot your I's and cross your T's and all that stuff. That stuff is still true with this Mercury retrograde. I really feel it is, but it takes a back seat on a huge level to all this other stuff that's going on. And what I mean is the other part of Mercury retrograde that people don't understand, and I absolutely love, and I try to shout this from the rooftops, is that it is not a time to hide under your bed. It is not a time to stop doing your readings. You may have to work a little harder to communicate the messages or kind of like really tune in and ground, but it's also a time to renew, renovate, restructure, anything with an RE, okay? And because we had such a huge shift in our energy, if we chose to participate in it, because some people, and if you've noticed, people are acting kind of cuckoo lately, like they cut you off. Yeah, not just on the road, but like with a grocery cart, you almost get run over at the grocery store. Like people have just been, and I think like I've noticed it calm down today, okay? But you're seeing this divergent, almost not as big as in like the 2020 2021 divergent timeline kind of jumping thing that was happening back then, but it's almost a similar like veer off where you're choosing to take care of yourself. And what'll happen is you'll start to see people shift in your life. Your job might shift, all that kind of stuff. But this Mercury retrograde is a time of slowing down. It's like a vacation from all other lessons. And it's time for you to integrate, process, take this time to do that. Don't start new projects. Don't be like, I'm out of the eclipse. I got my ideas and off I'm going to go because it's Aries and I got to do the thing. No. Mercury retrograde is here to say you still have time to convalesce. Like I was telling Jill earlier, we just had a huge energetic surgery of healing. Like if you're going to think of it from wounds healing, like those wounds were cleaned, they were washed of all of the icky old medicines that maybe we tried to use that didn't work, and which might have involved addictions and other kinds of things, and not just drug or alcohol addictions, food addiction, behavior addictions, scrolling or what, or caffeine,
or caffeine, coffee,
all that kind of stuff. Like it just the surgeries to clean out those wounds and put some salve. That's a weird word to say.
It is a weird word to say, yes.
Isn't it? But
if you see it writing, it looks weird. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
To say it is kind of weird. But that kind of like to put the stuff in there to make it heal, salve, and then stitch it up. And when we have those kinds of deep surgeries, we need convalescence time. And that's what I'm seeing. So our Mercury retrograde, and I'm looking off to my calendar, ends on the 25th. So between now and the 25th of March, take that time to like do a lot more journaling. April, my bad. Can you tell that I'm still like,
Mercury's in retrograde?
Mercury's retrograde. I don't know what the hell's going on. So yes, April 25th, my bad. The cool thing is right around the 19th, like we switch into Taurus season, which is much more grounding. So you'll start to feel it wane a lot more that day, but really focus on you and taking care of yourself, rest more, journal more, do your like values exercises. In my group, we're going to do values exercises for our woopreneur workshop stuff this month. Because in Taurus, and as we're kind of like this is one of those times where your entire value system may change. Like
I love what you're saying here, because I'm also hearing this might even be a good time to get a reading, to get some insights. I'm not just trying to pitch my services here, but I actually booked a reading.
It's okay if you are. That's another thing.
It is my channel. Like you guys don't know that I do this stuff for a living. I actually am going to see the psychic that I go to this month during the retrograde to get some, because I like this stuff too, you guys. But I love what you're saying about it being a convalescing time, a time of introspection rather than a time to be afraid to get your car, new brakes on your car. Although I do need to do that, by the way. that was a real example.
And it's funny because Mercury retrogrades stuff breaks down. So I would encourage you to go get the new brakes on the car.
But I'm
Don't
gonna
just
get
be
them.
like,
But should I wait till the
"Single
25th?
market, make sure my brakes last till the 26th."
That's
Don't
exactly
do
what I was gonna do. Is that not what I should do? Okay.
No, go get the brakes done. Go get
Silly.
them
I was just
done.
gonna, we have 2 cars. So I was like, I don't need to drive the red car as much. But okay.
Well, do whatever you're called to do, but
You
I
know what?
would,
That's
yeah.
a good point, though. You bring up a really good point. Like people like you and I are out there telling people what they should do. You and I aren't kind of really doing that, but don't listen to us, by the way. Just do what you think is best. But that's the whole point. Do what you think is best and use your own intuition, and don't listen to the nonsense, the scary stuff, because there's plenty of that. And I've put out some of it. I've put out some of it myself. But
I used to do it too, because when you're starting out, you're like, everybody gets so heady. They're so in their head about like, what am I doing? Should I do this right? And blah blah blah. Like, to me, this is a weather report. What we're doing here is a weather report. Okay?
Yep.
Here's the energy. Like right now in Nashville, it's raining. It's supposed to rain on and off for the next 3 days. Now, here's the thing.
I love rain.
I do too. My moon is Pisces. So if it's water, I'm like, I just want to be in the safety burrito and watch the rain and have music on. But anyway, so it's raining. It's going to rain on and off for the next few days, right? That's the weather report. My choice is, do I want to get wet? Do I want to stay dry? Like, do I want to go out to the grocery store? If I do I take an umbrella or just wear a raincoat? Like, it's really up to me how I navigate the weather. So we are here at this point, I think, in our journey, instead of being directional or predictive or that kind of thing, in my opinion, we talk about, here's the energy, here's the weather of what everyone will be navigating. Now, you guys who are listening, there is no right or wrong way. That's part of your journey. And when you abdicate your own agency to say, oh, I'm going to do what Michele says or what Jill says, that's not being on your path. That's kind of
it's being on our path.
It's being on our path that doesn't help you, because you're here for you and to experience you. And so we're here as your weather ladies, so that we can say, here's what's going on. And you can decide if you want to bring an umbrella, you want to go dance barefoot out in the rain, because you're participating in your wild woman stuff. You got to go do your to-dos, like, I don't know, go to the grocery store. Do I want to do it now or later? So that's how I see this. I don't, and that's why we're saying the Mercury retrograde, if we can give you a different perspective on how to understand, view, and embrace the weather so that you can make the best, most loving choice rather than a fearful choice, that's my role. That's what I think that's yours too, Jill. I think really, we've all been on the other side of it and it doesn't feel good. And this feels way better.
So wrapping it up, I think we should talk just briefly about the ghost thing you said earlier, because I know I mentioned ghosts and it's fun.
Yeah, let's talk about fun stuff.
We both are big fans of these like ghosty shows. I love them. I do. It's fun. I'm not interested in going ghost hunting. But you were telling us the story. You were telling me a story that I should have been recording about you went to a prison, and I was sharing. I was comparing notes because I went to Alcatraz. Tell your story, then I'll tell mine, and then we can just close with it. Talking about it just briefly, so that people won't need to be so scared. Because a lot of people, even my own clients, as this awakening, as this new energy is changing, they're seeing people that don't have bodies anymore. So talk about what that is, so that people don't be so scared, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Right. And to me, like, if you are somebody that is in a metaphysical space like we are versus a dogmatic religious space, the way that we see things, or the way I see things, I don't think of ghosts like Casper the Ghost or like the ghosts on the TV show Ghost, which by the way, I love that show. I think it's hilarious. But what I do see is intelligent energy. There's different, it's all energy to me. So there's intelligent energy, like when we're doing, mediumship or something, and somebody wants to connect with a loved one. That person, like on Star Trek, okay, when they had the beaming, and the concept of beaming is they beam your molecules from one place to the other, and your consciousness follows, and then it reconstitutes all of you somewhere else.
I guess I never got a definition of that. Thank you, Michele.
Matter and energy. That's my view, at least that's what I understand.
The soul follows. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because and there's a whole episode in Next Generation. Yes, I'm that nerdy. Oh, wow. I don't go to Comic-Con because they're stinky. But other than that, I do love me.
I'm more of a Lord of the Rings version of the nerd, but Star Trek's cool.
Yeah. So anyway, and there's a whole like episode in TNG about it where Picard gets beamed and his consciousness goes somewhere else. Anyway, but from that perspective, what happens is, like, say you and I are talking about your Grandma Sue or something, and Grandma Sue like source energy, as when we transition and everything is cool, we go back to source energy, and then the energy that was your Grandma Sue would reconstitute itself at at the highest vibration, well, at a very high vibration to us, lowest vibration as possible that it can communicate, where we can meet them, okay, to have communication.
Right. We go up to them, they come down to us. Yeah, that's how I see it too. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so there's that. Then there's like energy where we, in the 3D world, much like, when you, back in the olden days when TVs had tubes, when you turn it off, there'd be like a shadow of what was originally on there for a moment until it like fully stopped working, right? There's that, like an energy imprint. Like we were driving down the road one day, and in Nashville, we were kind of like a hub for the Civil War. There's several battles in a town called Franklin that's not too far from us. And we were driving from A to B in that town, and we literally, and as we're driving, there wasn't even enough time for me to say anything until after it was over. But like there was soldiers, like translucent soldiers, walking across this back road we were driving on. And like my first thought was, we're going to run over these people. And then we drove through it, and it felt the way a bullet going through, what is it called? Like forensics gel. If you've ever watched.
Never experienced that. I've seen it.
Yeah, if you've ever seen that, that's it. It felt the way that looks, and where you're kind of like, whoa,
yeah,
and then you're like, what the fuck just happened?
Yep. What the F just happened? Yep.
Yeah, and then and that to me, you don't feel the energy there as far as like an intelligent energy. It's much more of like an imprint of what happened. So there's those kinds of things. But as far as like that was one of my ghost stories. Another one, my partner, he does a lot of film work. And years ago, he was shooting a documentary film on the prison system in Tennessee. And there's this prison not too far from us where they shot that Robert Redford movie, The Last Castle. And it was part of that prison system that they were shooting, the time frame of the documentary. And on set was me, one of the former prisoners, a former guard, and like a couple of other tech people. And so me and the guy who was a former prisoner, who by the way was one of the most gentle souls, like, if you were not me and you were just like a muggle and you found out this person and what they had done, you'd be like, I'm just going to stand over here. But for whatever reason, like he told me what he did, told me his story, and I was like, wow. And I was like wanting to hug him because I felt like his soul was not tortured. His soul was just, he had worked his soul lessons, and his soul was very sweet. I know that sounds really weird when you talk about someone who went to prison for some really interesting things. But anyway, so we were talking, and there's this nondescript building. Like you see the main, like where the cells were kind of like on one side. And that was kind of creepy. You go in there and the air is really this weird, damp isn't the right word, but that's the only word in the English language I can come up with for it. It's like damp with spirit. And then there was this other kind of nondescript, it looked like it might be a storage building, or it didn't have any windows, or like an admin building or something. And I said to him, and in the middle of it, I kept seeing this black vortex just still there. And it was just kind of like out, like I would see it, and it was like there was nothing really else happening except that. And I said to him, I was like, hey, so like I know this is this. I was like, what is that? I don't tell people like that I don't know that I see shit. It's more like,
yeah, no, I think that's wise.
Yeah, like, because you don't know, especially here in
know.
the South, where they're like, let me take you to church and get you baptized because you need that. So anyways, I didn't say what I was doing or seeing. I was like just being curious and a dumb girl. And I just said, that's a cell block. I was like, what is this building? And he goes, oh, that was very like nonchalant. Oh, well, that was death row. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what that black thing was. So yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting to me, like, the whole idea of ghosts being like these kind of non-corporal but still intact beings that wander around is not, it's a Hollywood manufacturing of things versus what actually is. Like, yes, I do feel there's energy. I do feel that they reincorporate, but I don't think people stay incorporated all the time. Except for like situations where, say, somebody is, you know, crosses over in a very intense way that's unexpected, like a car wreck or murder, like, and they feel that people need to be looked after. But that, it's funny because that only it doesn't last like an inordinate amount of time. Like, there's like reconciliation and then they transition.
I think my experience too with because when I've seen ghosts, I remember the first time I saw a ghost because I saw it with my physical eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's somebody in my house, And
Yes.
then, but a lot of times when I see, when I'm doing mediumship and I'm seeing somebody's dead granny, I'm seeing him in my mind's eye. And the dead granny is showing me like her on her best day, her best dress, her pearl. She's showing me when she's 25 and she was the weight she never was when the person knew her. Like, and they're showing me things that would help me tell the person in front of me that is my granny. But it's all in my mind's eye. And so when I go to a place and I'm seeing something with my physical eyes, I'm like, is that really a person? Or is that, oh wait, there's no feet. Okay. Definitely not a person. And like what we were talking about Alcatraz, by the way, if you guys get a chance, you should go to Alcatraz. It's really fun. But it's super freaking haunted. And you're going and you're on a boat and there's a million people there and it's crowded. I mean, people, it's the tour, it's crowded there. You're around a lot of people. So if you're kind of scared of ghosts, but you want to go see a person, don't worry. There's a million people there. It's like with bodies, people with bodies, and you're not going to feel scared. But it was one cell that I started to go into and I could feel like hands on me going, nope, 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 nope. You don't belong in here. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Try it again. Feel the hands. Okay. You don't have to tell me 3 times. I'm like, this is not. And my husband walked in. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was just, maybe he didn't like me. I don't know. Maybe this person didn't like women. But it was an interesting experience. And I would say when you're walking around, I would feel these like little clumps of energy, like you're walking through it.
Yeah.
And people would walk through it and not really notice anything. But I was like, oh, energy is thicker here. This must be a person without a body anymore or something. But it was a neat experience. I would recommend to anybody who's a little scared of those kinds of things but curious. That's a good place because there's plenty of people.
Yeah. And I think that like it's funny because like if you do have, because I do feel that there are, like you said, like disembodied energies that are stuck in certain places. I think there's various kinds of energy, but it's all energy. It's just at different levels. Like how when we were saying, they have to, the ones that we generally like, source energy has to come down in vibration to meet us where we are. And by that, I don't, they're low vibration. Like not that. Like
true.
Literally, we are solid. Like from a physics perspective, we are more solid.
I think you guys can understand what she's talking about.
Yeah. So they have to like slow themselves down so we have to raise our energy up to meet them. But I think it's interesting that you have, in that transitional space, there's, the energy that is still intelligent, still kind of intact with who they were in whatever last lifetime they were. And they're in that transitional phase, but maybe because they were so low vibrational in life that they take longer to raise their vibration up and go back to where they're supposed to be. I mean, I don't know. I guess we won't know until.
Unfortunately, it's not for Michelle or I to judge
right.
some of these actions. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good point. I have no idea. Somebody I'm sure in the comments will say something. Thank you guys. Appreciate the input.
Yeah, of course. Always open to new like ideas because I always like that's the nerd in me. The nerd in me is always wanting to know, like, I wonder how that works.
We're just making this up anyway, right?
Because it's really just based on feeling and faith, I guess.
Feeling and faith. That's a good way of putting it. Well, on that note, Michelle, we could talk about this all day, and unfortunately, we probably can will at some point, but we're going to call this today on this one. So thank you so much, Michele. I'm going to put all of Michele's deets in the description, but say it out loud, Michele, how someone can reach you if they want to book a session or they want to join your Soulpreneur program.
Sure. If you want to reach out to me, you can go to my website, soulcoachstudio.com. There's a contact button at the top menu bar to reach out. You can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, in the links in the show notes. And feel free to, if you were just like, hey, I really loved what you said, or you want to talk more about leaving your soul sucking corporate job because you've woken up and you're like, I just can't do this anymore. But I, I'm not quite sure where to go. That's kind of where I do my magic, is to support people in that transition from soul sucking job to woopreneur, prosperous, manifesting all the dreams and all that business. But yeah, that's where you can find me: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Soul Coach Studio.
I know somebody's somebody's killing it on that. Yeah. And I wrote a book on that subject too. Interestingly enough, I didn't realize that you, okay. I wrote a book on that too, called The High Income Healer. That is about that same thing, and I love that you're doing, I love that I'm seeing a lot more woopreneurs, as you put it. I think that's a great way of putting it, by the way. Writing about this, because I feel like the next generation of people is coming from the corporate world. I mean, you certainly came from a really conventional job as a paralegal. I used to sell software. I mean, I sold car insurance. I mean, I don't know how much more conventional you can get than that. And I feel like people listening who are interested in this kind of work, they're awakening. Maybe they're taking some classes online. They're trying to figure out how to get from that miserable, awful office space type job into doing something that's fulfilling and fun. And there's a path, and we've all tread it. And we can save you some time by getting some coaching on how to do that, so that you don't have to spend 10 years trying to get profitable. You can do it in 2 or 3 years, or even less.
Right. Yeah. And I know, I spent 8 years wanting to leave, and then that's how long it took me to leave.
Oh, me too. I wasn't quite that long, but it was, I don't know about you, but for me, I always thought it was always going to be a side hustle, because I was doing psychic readings and hypnotherapy in the evening. And I'm like, I'm just always going to have 2 jobs. That's always it. And then, one just kind of left me.
Yeah. Like, yes.
Okay. And then clients started showing up, and I'm like, well, I guess this is how it is now.
Isn't it funny? You go from being like, oh my God, what happens if I don't get paid every 2 weeks? I'll live under a bridge. And then it's like, oh, this ain't so bad. Oh, this must be how it is now. Okay. And you're just you just go from this really interesting place to another interesting place.
Yeah, but I love how you put that. But it's important to point out that you and I both have done a lot of work on ourselves to make it so that we didn't, lose our shiz when we got the pink slip, right? So
right.
And that,
or you handed in your notice. I mean, that was
in your notice.
Yeah, that was the harder one, because I was wishing that somebody would lay me off, so I wouldn't have to make that choice.
I love it, but that's a good point, though. It's you do the work, guys. Do the work.
Do the work.
So thank you for that. And thanks for listening for us ranting on 3 different topics. If there's anything you guys, I love Michele, so she's definitely going to come back whenever you want to. So if there's something you guys want us to talk about, put it in the comments. I appreciate that, and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.